Hello, everybody. Welcome to the Write or Die Show. I'm your host, Randi-lee. On the show, we interview other writers and we talk about mental health from their personal journeys. If you have not already, hit that like and subscribe button. Go ahead, do that now so that you never miss an episode. Hello, everyone. How are you on this, for me, super torrentially rainy kind of day? Yeah. It's gross out there today for us, so hopefully you guys have better weather than me. Although my garden is loving it, so obviously it's still a good thing. Just saying. Anyways, let me introduce our guest to you, Kendra Dodd. Hello.
Hello. It's nice to be here. It's good to see you.
Yeah, so how are you? I know you were talking about looking at colleges. That is crazy. My kid's also going next year. He's already picked, so he's already going. But how is it?
It's different. This is actually this is my middle child, so this is my second child going to college, and it is completely different. It feels completely different than the first time. You would think, oh, I've done this before, and it's not. I'm going through different emotions, experiences, and so it's so funny how our brain or our bodies, we think that something we experience will be the same, and nothing can be the same, right? And so that is so I'm shocked in my emotions and feelings that are happening because I didn't have it last time. And so, yeah, I mean, it's just funny how our mind does that, right? And our body tells us something different.
Oh, that is funny. Especially like trying to figure out how to put words into what my brain is thinking. But like obviously also has to do with each kid is different. Mm-hmm. But it's like, yeah, you would expect it to be similar, at least. No,
not even close. And part of it too is my son went in during that whole pandemic issue too. So the experience of the process is a little different because we were limited because of the pandemic.
Okay, so this is basically a new experience then. Like it's this, yeah, okay, it's college, but it's a new experience because that part is all gone.
Yes, absolutely.
Thank goodness.
Yeah, I will agree to that.
So tell us a little bit, other than the fact that you have children, tell us a little bit more about who Kendra is.
Yes. Well, I grew up in the United States. I would say the South. I mean, every region is very different. And so I do distinctly say that I grew up in the South and went to college and everything. And then after I became an adult, I moved around. I lived in 7 different states literally across the United States. So here I am growing up at the South. And then as an adult, after I graduated from grad school, then moved out to the Northwest. So Oregon and Portland area. Then I lived in Utah in the Midwest. Not Midwest. I lived in the mountain region and then lived up and down the East Coast. And then I'm in the Midwest now. So I've hit almost every region except for Texas. I think Texas can be its own country, right? In the United States, if you know anything about it. It's just so different. Florida can be different too. But it's been interesting. And I had a career in human resources. So that's what I did. And then started my own business. Because there's parts of, I love all of human resources. I'm certified in it and all these things, and I help people get certified. But I love the organizational development, the development of people, the personal development, the relationship part the most. And so that's what I started my business, Fulfilled to Be. So it's an LLC of how to make individuals and teams and organizations stronger together. And that is how I work on it. So I start with the core, the person, and I build out.
Oh, well, that's nice.
Yeah.
I'm still always shocked whenever I talk to anybody in the States, because it seems to be a States thing. You guys move around so much. So much. And it's not a bad thing. I have to say I'm a little bit jealous. It's not that we can't, but like where I am in Canada, I'm in the most southern part.
Okay.
I don't want to move anywhere else because then it's colder. Right? Like
right.
So right. But in the States, you have a lot more options of not gross weather.
Yeah.
So
yeah.
I would like that. Any hoozle. Let's talk about mental health.
Yeah.
So start your story wherever makes the most sense, and I will I'll pop in when I have questions.
Yeah. Yeah. I think with mental health, and how I look at it, if I go back in my time of emotions and feelings and how you are mentally just wasn't looked at, right? You just had to be tough. And
Mhm.
I think the first time of what's healthy and what's strong, and thinking about emotions, like we were talking about emotions before we got on with my college kids, like each one is different and we think our brain will do differently. Um, we moved, I came from a big town, a very small town, and very big family. That's the part I was going to say. I have like 28 first cousins. My mom was one of
Moly.
I know, huge, huge. And to this day, they're very close. And I'm the one that out of the 10, and my mom is the youngest, that moved away. And so I remember moving. I remember being the outsider and how that feels, and how, even from a mental health standpoint, they didn't talk about transitions. They didn't talk about things that are different. They didn't talk about, well, what's wrong with her? Why is she emotional? Right? Within that change. And looking at that. And also, I think generationally, right? I hate to say it, that even where I grew up is kids were to be seen and not heard. So
Yes.
how your emotions are not as important. And so then it's like, why is she emotional? Why are things that way? And so it helped me, and not being allowed to have emotion and feel emotion, to then understand, why are people like that? Right?
Oh,
Like it didn't make me feel less than. It's like, why would they? Because it felt very natural to me, and
yes.
what's healthy for me and what's important to me. And I think it, at an early age, it helped me define my needs, and then advocating for my needs, and then how to advocate for others. Like, that is a huge thing for me, is advocating for others' voices. And so I think it started that early of an age, when here I
Wow.
am, a stranger, I'm new to the area. And a lot of people so I moved from one small town to another, but they knew who we were. And this was before social media, right? You're talking the 70s.
So like so you moved from one place to the other, but the new place still knew who you were.
They knew, because here's the thing. My dad was a police officer.
Ah. Okay.
And so in the United States, you have like regional, then you have level, and then you have state. So even though
Yeah.
he was a state trooper, he was responsible for the area. It was a profound, people knew, and it was talk, because he was one of the first Blacks that were hired within the county.
Okay. Yep, that would really stand out. Yep.
And so
Especially in the 70s.
in the 70s in the South,
Yeah. Oh, and in the yep, that is
right? So
definitely
as we're building the story and building the picture and
yep.
what that looks like, right? And so I was a very, very shy girl. And so for everyone to already know who I am, right? Or the know of us, was
Yes.
very challenging.
Yeah, that would be, and hopefully just knowing of you, it was not a bad perspective, but we're talking the 70s in the South.
Right.
So
Yeah. So, and so that's another thing, is like, people, can you imagine even nowadays how people could see people on social media and think they know him or know of them because they know a part of their story? It was happening.
right.
Like, people were talking to me like, who are you? You're a stranger. Right. And understanding that. And so there's certain things that even built from that I built for my kids. Like, I was just talking to a friend about this the other day. And it's our kids' godparents, and they were in the military, and they were saying how it felt to be, even with family, like, hey, tell that child to hug me. I'm their uncle or whatever. I'm their
Oh, I
relative.
hate
And they're like,
that.
no, you're still a stranger. And so that, even with me, I have that same rule, ironically, because of, they're still a stranger. I don't care who they are. But
Yeah.
I'm glad that my parents have perimeters. Like, I don't do the same thing. Now that's one thing I don't do, is like, so when they met good friends, they didn't make, if they're family friends, they're Miss or Mrs., but they never became auntie or uncle type of
Mm.
thing. And so that was just a rule. I don't keep that rule. Um, but I will tell you, I do understand, and I help my children know where their parameters are, right? And that goes to mental health, of knowing, do you have to, and how do you fight against it, and how to be healthy, and what your needs are. And
Yeah.
so that is the core of what I'm trying to say in all of this, is that it all started very young, of my needs and what I needed to be healthy, to think sharply, to feel safe, right? And to confident within the space that wherever I go, which led to, when I became an adult, I moved around. Even though I didn't move around as a child, I still felt as if I was a stranger in my own land, if that makes any sense.
I think I think it does. I think somebody out there can definitely identify with that.
Yeah.
Yeah, the whole auntie uncle thing, there was a couple, like my Aunt Tracy and my Aunt Lori, but they were also my godparents. So they weren't biologically there, but they were my godparents. So they were Aunt Tracy and Aunt Lori.
Yep.
I don't think I ever had anybody that was uncle something that was not actual related. Just trying to think. I don't think I have. It just dawned on me that I never did. I only ever had my
the actual. Yeah.
Okay, so as you're trying to figure out fitting in, and I want to say fitting out. That sounds really fun.
I like that.
Out. Yeah.
Fit out. Yeah, I like that.
Yeah. So as you're trying to fit in, but really, we should really just learn to be okay with fitting out. I love that. Love that.
I like that.
I don't usually come up with the cool quotes. Normally, it's my guest that comes up with the cool quotes. What were some of the things that you tried to do?
I think some of the things that I try to do is speak my truth, right? And I think that's gone at an early age, but respectfully, right? I still would speak what I felt and what my opinion was. And ironically, I think my daughter, that's the one that's going to college, is probably, my family calls her 0.2. She is just a higher modified version of that. And I'm trying to navigate as her parent what my parents would have thought in the same thing as they were parenting me. But, just speaking for certain things and rights happened early. My brother even told a story, and I don't even remember. I don't have the best, like if it wasn't a positive experience, I removed it from my memory and past a lot of times. But I just had a milestone birthday. And my husband did a very nice video of just friends of the past, and they did like sayings. And so my brother spoke, and we have an age gap. We're almost 6 years apart. And he told the story of, he was in kindergarten. So I had to be fourth grade, fifth grade, sixth grade.
Okay. So he's younger.
He's younger. He's a lot younger. I'm the oldest. And he was like, well, my sister's coming, and she's going to tell you, she's going to make this right. And he said that I came in, and I apparently had a conversation and talked about what his needs were and why things were. And I'm like, okay. And he said, I just felt so reaffirmed. And then he said, and then I walked out and I grabbed his hand, like we were one thing. And he said, we walked out, and she said, you're okay. And I'm like, oh, wow, that's kind of adult of me. And he's like, we got halfway through the hall, and he said that I told him, okay, I'm not going to hold your hand the whole way. I will hold your hand for a while, but I'm letting go. And he was like, that is so you too, at the same time of, okay, I've done this. We've been through this, but you need to handle this on your own as well. Get your composure.
That's so cool.
Right? And so he was just saying, it just helped him know that I have his side, but also that the expectations I had of him is to also be independent. And I'm like, don't remember that at all, but glad you do. Thank you for telling the story.
I think it's a core memory for him,
right?
Which is why he remembers it, especially being so young.
And
that's a nice memory. Actually, I just recorded on somebody else's podcast yesterday, and that was one of the really big things that we talked about. So the podcast I was on, I can't remember what it's called. I'm horrible with names. But it's was about raising kids with autism. And
Oh,
one of the biggest things that I said was give them autonomy and a voice at a young age, which goes along exactly with mental health, with,
mhm,
life in general. You
mhm.
have to give them some kind of autonomy at a young age. Now, obviously, there are certain things like, okay, I'm going to go buy a dog with my birthday money. Well, no, you're not. Right. So
Right,
obviously, there's things that you're like, okay, I'm
right,
putting a stop to that. But
right.
things like, no, I don't want to go hug that person. Just because you're saying I'm related does not mean I know who they are. Like that,
Exactly.
when you made that point, I was like, oh, yes, that is that point. Um,
Mhm.
and so by giving them that voice at a young age, you're teaching them that they're valued, which
Yes.
goes a long way in
Mhm,
helping them feel like they are worthwhile.
mhm. Exactly. And that's very, very important for me. And maybe because I felt it, right? And so
Mhm.
as the older I became, the more that became profound for me.
Mhm.
To speak that and to say that. One of the things I tell my kids all the time, and I don't want it to be a kids thing, is that I want them to go through the destiny that was created for them. And a spiritual religion, whatever. And I'm like, whatever that God has for them, right? The universe or
Mhm.
whatever you want to say that people beliefs are, but mine is God, that
Yeah.
you believe it to be, right?
Yeah.
Let no one stop you, even myself. And I tell them that on a regular basis.
See, I like that.
They were gifted to me, right? But they have their own destiny, they have their own
Yeah.
whatever journey, and I help them navigate. But if they know this is what they're destined to be, don't even let me, their mother, hinder
Mhm.
them from that.
Oh, I love that. I love that a lot. Um, because I think that, I mean, as you're saying that, I am having a little bit of flashback to when I want to say I was 18, 17, something like that. And I
Hmm.
said to my mom, be a hairdresser. I think I want to go be a hairdresser. And she said, you're not going to like it. Nope, you're not going to like it. So I didn't go do it because she told, I mean, in the end, I'm glad that I didn't, but I think I still would have enjoyed doing it.
Right.
Um, but I didn't even think about it past well, you're not going to like it. Don't do it.
Mm.
Because because my aunt did it and she liked it, but then she got like allergic to the chemicals or something, so she had to stop.
Oh. Oh.
And so because that happened to my aunt, I wouldn't like it.
Mm.
I'm
Got
like,
it.
why are you projecting her to
Yeah.
me? But in my little world back then, I was like, okay, sure.
Right.
um
Mhm.
I'm glad though that eventually I stopped listening to my mom in those regards. Like I love my mom, don't get me wrong.
Mhm.
um but like because of the style of books that I often write about mental illness and the fact that I share my story about mental illness,
Mhm.
if I would have listened to her, I definitely would not be where I am now, because she was like, oh, are you sure you want to talk about that? People don't really want to hear about that. I'm like,
Right.
you're right. They don't. That's why I need to.
Oh, good point. Such a good point. Such a good point. Um, yeah, no, very, very good point within that. Yeah, of people, and I've heard a lot of times in the work that I've done is that the thing in which that you think that you're most ashamed of is the thing in which you're not alone, that people need to hear of what your testimony and story is.
Yes, exactly. And I'm not saying everybody needs to do it quite as loudly as I do or you do, since you're coming on podcasts and talking.
Right.
Um, but don't let it push you down and make you ashamed of who you are, because you
And
I
yeah.
I just had a guest. The episode's not out yet because it's a recorded episode that I'm using when I'm on vacation.
Hmm.
But on this episode, when it comes out, um, she says, you are not what happened to you.
Yep.
There's nothing more to say than that. It was perfect.
No. There's a book that I was just telling someone last night. There's a book called What Happened to You.
Oh,
It is a really good book. It's actually Oprah Winfrey and a neuropsychologist. Yeah, it's called What Happened. It came out maybe 3 years ago. and it talks about trauma and all those things. And if you like audio, like if you don't like audiobooks, this is the audiobook to listen to because it doesn't feel like an audiobook. It feels like a podcast because
Oh, that's the one I like.
they co-wrote it. And so both of them are speaking in their writing.
Oh,
And
I
so it
like
feels
that.
like a podcast. So if you don't like a book on tape, I would just give a second try to what happened to you. And it is on
Yeah.
mental health. That is really, really, really good because you have both of them speaking. And so it feels more like a conversation than reading the book.
Oh, I love that. Yeah, I love audiobooks when they're read excitingly, as they should be, right? Books should
Right.
be exciting, no matter the topic.
Right.
I have definitely listened to some that were monotone and horrible, and I'm like, no.
Yeah.
But
Yeah. So no,
I
that I agree of what happened. And so that is one of the questions I do ask of when people get to their perspectives or when things are happening. Because a lot of things happen in that evolution, like even looking at military, I have a core belief that anyone in service, from school teacher to fireman to police officer, right? Professors already do it. And that's putting, or even clergy are given sabbaticals. Why can't people in service? They need to have a mental health break. They need sabbaticals because there were certain things that were happening in my father's life let's just start with how I started and how he started. In the 70s, you were one of the first,
Yep.
So there's so many things. And then just the duty of the job itself
Yeah.
in the public is a lot. And I do believe for mental health that every community service person that gives to the community like that should be able to have paid sabbaticals in some kind of way.
Yeah. Without
Because
jumping through hoops.
yes, not forced because something happens. And so, I could go to so many things in my theories, right? But just the mental health and where the strain that it provides and just having a timeout and military, right? All these things is because they weren't able to have the ability to be cared for or during a downtime to reflect and to get better from a
Yes.
healthy standpoint.
Yeah. And as you're talking, in these service professions, I had a guest on not too long ago. I wish I was better with names, but her husband died by suicide because, and I didn't know this before, but there's a very high suicide rate with doctors. Because none of them want to speak out. They're scared they're going to lose their medical license. Which I'm like, oh, snap. I never thought about that. And for him specifically, he was a cancer doctor, oncologist. There we go. And so a lot of the times he was dealing with patients that he couldn't save. Like there was literally nothing he could do other than help them be comfortable. So that puts a lot of stress, right? Having to help people die. And so when she was telling her story, it really got to me. And now you saying that, I'm like, right, exactly. That's exactly it. There should have been no stigma attached to this. There should have been, okay, you have a super high stress job and you are helping people every day. Just because you have a mental illness does not mean that you're not capable of doing it. But sometimes you might need a sabbatical.
Yes. And it doesn't. I mean, all those things that you said, I completely. So what it gets covered up. So that's when, if you look, like police officers are known to have higher level of stress, heart attacks, more than average rate than anyone else, right? And what that looks like. Matter of fact, speaking of suicide, unfortunately, my dad had said he would never give a reference because he doesn't know what someone can handle and what they don't. The one reference he did for someone, they did end up committing suicide. And so he couldn't handle it. So I really think from a mental health, especially high stress giving to the community, there needs to be, or kind of like what you said with your other guest, of there's no stigma attached to it. Oh, how can he be a police officer if he's going through some mental health issues? And so a lot of things, then they protect each other, but they're not healing each other. They're just protecting and covering things up, but there's no healing in that process and what's going on.
Exactly. And from other guests who have been, whether they've been vets or retired police officers or whatever, because now they are prepared to speak out because now they're finished with their profession. Right. And a lot of them, they took it home. And what happens when you take it home and you are living in this very high stressed spot is you take it on your family a lot of times, right? It's a very high correlation. So, and then later they look back and go, oh my gosh, I'm so sorry that I did that. And, but at the time, because they're so scared of the reaction from the other people in their profession or losing their profession,
right,
they don't get the help.
Yeah.
And so one person suffering is not how it goes. One person dealing with it has an effect on everybody else.
Yes. And I will say I was part of that statistic, right? Yeah, in some things. So yeah. Absolutely.
So what would you say to somebody listening right now who is going through it? So let's say they are a police officer, because that's in your family. And they're going through just the struggle of, how do I get help, but I don't want to get help because I'm scared of what people will say. And what's your wisdom for them?
You know, the thing that is resonating with me the most is I do fall into that statistic, all the things you said, they brought it home and things of that nature. Is that my mom, I was very upset with my mom. And at some time of like, why are you putting yourself, why are you putting us through it? Like, what's going on? And I'm not, no one's perfect, but this is the response she told me. She said, right now, she said, if someone has a cold, would you treat it? If someone was sick, and she named different type of illnesses, would you help them through that illness? And she said, right now, your father's sick, and we need to help him through this illness. And that was before, and I'm like tearing up of just, I was just mad. I was, like, how can you? And so the older I get, the more I realize there's so much more wisdom in how she was expressing that to me.
Right. Your mom was a smart lady.
And so that is what I'll tell others, is that you got to separate. And so I separated the dad that raised me or whatever to the dad that was ill. And so I spoke to the illness and not to the man, right? It's not what happens to you. It's the thing in which they're trying to fight.
Yeah.
And so that becomes easier if you can separate then what they are. But what we do is we blend them all together as if that's the person. The good thing is I do have good memories. There's things that I had. And so then something happened that then caused that to change. It's kind of like that something. And so then you identify that illness, you identify those behaviors. And so you talk about the behaviors and not the person. Like, it's kind of that 101 of how to do conflict resolution. You talk about the behaviors. You don't tell the person they are this. You say, these are the behaviors. And then we talk, how can we together fight this behavior? Right. And then sometimes it's up to them from a mental standpoint to fight those tendencies, but also for us then to identify that behavior and attack that behavior and what needs to be changed. And so I would say that's what it is that what is behaviors that you don't want to exude anymore or exemplify, that you want to release. And then we peel back that onion of, what are those things that's causing me to behave that way? Where are the triggers that are causing me to behave that way? And those experiences, and then you clean that up. You have to find the root of it, right? Or the roots, whatever you want to call it, WROOT, right? And then dig that up so you can remove it. And so it doesn't become as detrimental or a part of you. Not saying it'll ever go away, right? But I think that's what's very important is when those things happen. Like you said, I know people that once they've retired, they're talking about it and they see it. But in the now, say, what is it in my behavior, right? And don't claim it as you. I think when you start separating of that's not me, and then don't get stuck in the past.
Well, that's a big one too, which is a really hard one for people in that profession, because that's how PTSD develops, right? It's all this trauma that happens, and it is past trauma affecting the now. So that is super hard one to do, but it is so important to do.
Right. Exactly. And it's, and there's so much in that trauma can compound itself. It's not something that happened overnight. One data point doesn't make a trend. It doesn't formulate a behavior. It's that repetitive, it's the pattern of that then profounds, that creates that.
Exactly. And so, well, and they've been calling that now complex PTSD, right? So there is, okay, you went to war. So war is the thing. So you have that one event, which, I mean, it's one event, but it could be months long. Or you have all of these tiny little things that build and build and build and build.
Yes. Right. Yeah. Sometimes people, I don't want to be stereotypical, right? And that's in anything. People have different experiences. Everyone, I think the percentage of dysfunctional families is like 70% or something like that, right?
Oh, I believe it.
It's a high number. And so all of us do, and they do. And then if you then put yourself in a situation that enhance that, I think that becomes very effective. Like health is really big that I work on. Health, period. Like physical health, mental. My dad had his first stroke and heart attack in his 40s.
Oh, wow.
And that was stress, right? Our body is feeding. And so with that of how can I do that? So we all are disproportioned in certain things, but how can we release of letting that trigger go, right? Of where that is. And so if you're in the military and you already had come from a broken home and some things that's happened or things and then you add that just becomes that complex or compound that can cause a heavier outcome of behavior that maybe is not wanted. Yes, that is hard to control because we didn't deal with the stuff that was underneath that or that happened in the past.
Exactly. Yep. Live in the now is easy to say, hard to do.
Yes.
But worthwhile when you can make it there.
Mm-hmm. And I think that's very important. That goes all the way full circle of how we started. It starts from the childhood.
Exactly.
So just as important in getting help for the officer or the person in service, also getting help for the children.
Yeah. The spouse. And
the children. And the spouse. Yes.
Yeah. Everyone that is affected. Because like I said, it's not one person.
No.
It's that person that has it and then shares it. My grandson likes to say sharing is caring. Well, not when it comes to trauma. Just to lighten the mood.
Yep, exactly. Nope. There's sometimes you shouldn't share.
Yeah. He was saying that on the weekend. He was, I think we were eating a snack. We were having popcorn or something. And he gives me a piece of popcorn. He gives Grandpa a piece of popcorn. And my husband goes, oh, no, thanks. I don't want any. And Adrian goes, but sharing is caring. Meaning you're taking this because I'm caring about you and I'm sharing my snack with you. Well, it's just very funny.
Mm-hmm.
So tell us a little bit about what you've written, what's going on.
Good. So I have written a book called Perspectives.
Kind of like what we've just been talking about, huh?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So yeah, it's called Perspectives, and it's 3 parts to the book. And what's very exciting, I don't know if anyone told you, I don't know what type of reader you are. Are you the reader that just reads it and you want a pristine book? Like I take the cover off if it's a hardback. Mine is a paperback, but it is designed that you can write in this book is interactive.
Oh, nice.
I know some people that it's a helpful book. And there's 3 parts to it. The first part is self-reflection, self-assessment. Where are your values? Where are your thoughts? To kind of just do a full-blown in so many avenues of what your beliefs are. And some people don't. The beliefs only show up when there's conflict, right? Of, I strongly feel about this after it's occurred. But this is a way that's a proactive, right? To look at what I feel, what are my thoughts. And then that's the first part of the book. And then the second part, I did a lot of research and study through my own experience or through others of where are the most complex. Like I had walls and walls of flip chart paper. What are those key things? And so I chose 38 of things in which everyday life can happen. And we think we understand each other, but that can cause a tremendous gap, what I call a bridge moment of us disagreeing and have different perspectives. And that can be family members. You can grow up in the same home and you realize my perspective's different. And so I'll talk about where they come from and different things. So I talk about from death to illness, right? I talk about from colors, even like wearing it. I actually used that twice. I really had a hard time of there's color within the what we wear and color in which actually skin type actually
Oh,
is a
yeah.
thing. So I talk about that. I mean, I talk about all different things. I talk about appearance, like all these different things of what is acceptable or not through perspective.
Mhm.
And then in that middle part of when you approach that, I had written it and I realized, well, when you approach this and let's say we disagree, how do we come to some type of resolution? So I gave a 4-step process of how to navigate through it. So each one that I present, I'll say, have you encountered this? How, what did you do? And let's go through the 4-step process. And then
Okay.
the last part of the book is case studies or
Hmm.
action plans or challenges to do to see what you've learned and apply it. So it's application.
Oh, yes.
Yeah.
I
So,
like that.
mhm.
I really like when books like when they're the helpful kind of book and they give you that opportunity right then and there to write, because I'm not looking for another book and another notebook, even though I have, 20,000 of them. I'm
Mhm.
not going through the trouble of looking for another book to write in. I just want to be able to do it now in the moment while I'm thinking about it.
Yes.
And
Yes.
so I think that's wonderful. And you're right. There are some people that want to keep their books completely pristine. I am not one of them. Although I don't like the corner flipping. I don't like that. I
Yeah.
gave my mom I gave my mom shit the one day because we were camping and I let her borrow one of my books
Mm.
and I was like, "You don't do that." So, doesn't have to be pristine, but don't crinkle the
Right.
corner.
Yeah. I don't either. I don't like that either.
Excellent.
I do like my
Um,
highlighters and things of that nature. What I
right?
do like about the book too, there's another book that I've someone gave me when I first got married, and is that you can pick it up and put it down at any time. Like I want this to be a resource. I don't want it to be a book that, oh, I read that at one time. Like literally, if you're going through a change, you might do it all over again, or you might do a portion of it again, or you know what, I
Yeah.
can only handle so much because here's the thing that I'm realizing, and that's with the mental health. I read, I'm probably going to butcher the actual quote, but
That's okay.
you can only go far in your mental health is that you allow yourself to reflect on yourself. And
Oh.
so, I think that's very important. And I had beta readers that read this, and I had one bad review out of the beta readers, but it gave me the resolve that I'm on the right track. She said, I like the stories that you told about yourself first. Like, why are you asking questions about me? I want to hear more about you. And I'm like, you're missing the whole point of the book. And so that's good that it was touching her at a certain core that
Yeah,
she
yeah,
didn't
yeah.
want to reflect. And so I'm like, okay, I'm hitting at the right time, but maybe
Yeah.
that's where you put it down and pick it back up. And so that's what I like about this book. It can be a journey for you, and it's whatever
Yeah.
pace you want it to be.
Oh, that's good. I know I'm with that beta read on that one. I do like hearing other people's stories more than having to reflect on my own. Um, but I mean, it's hard to reflect on your own. But that's why I went to a therapist, because it was too hard to do all by myself. But if you want to do it by yourself, this book sounds like the perfect opportunity to do so.
Yeah. I
Yeah.
think what I realized, I've had some professional reviewers and editor, read the book and they said, this is a hard book. So the more and more I'm doing that, the more I'm thinking about probably I'm looking into, and so people can follow me and find me, that I'm really thinking about, I'm major, LinkedIn, Instagram, Facebook.
Yep.
I'm really thinking about having a group and go through it
Mm,
together. Now, I have to do the disclaimer. I'm a life and career coach, but I am not a psychiatrist. I am not a therapist.
yes.
But just to do something together and have perspective, I'm seriously thinking about that's been some feedback of creating some type of groups and we're journeying through the book together.
Yes. And that would be, yeah, as long as people know that this is not, it's not a therapy group.
No.
It's a book club,
Yeah.
basically. Yeah,
Yeah.
it's a book club of
Hmm.
people who want to share the experience of doing this particular hard book
Hmm.
together.
Yeah. Absolutely.
That's a really nice idea. Look at you coming up with all the good ideas over there.
Listen to the feedback. I'm trying to listen to other perspectives. I didn't think about it because that's something I've done all along, and so I didn't realize as I continued of how this can be hard for some people.
Right? Exactly. Especially like I find if you've done it yourself, it's like, oh, it's not that hard. But then you're like, wait, it was super hard when I did it.
Exactly.
Nice. Okay,
Yeah.
so where do people follow you? I know you mentioned some of them, but what's your handles?
So Kendra Q Dodd. So you can put the Q in. Q stands for quintessential. I've made that up, and it's not true. It's not. People always ask, "What's the Q?"
But I
for?
like it though.
Right? But yeah, Kendra Q Dodd. So I'm on LinkedIn. If you just put Kendra Kendra, Q, and then Dodd. It is kind of the most butchered last name. So I say D as in David, D to the O to the double D. So that's what I say. So DODD. And then LinkedIn. So that's LinkedIn. Facebook the same way, Kendra Q Dodd. You'll find me. And then Instagram the same.
Perfect. I like when things are the same because then it's easy to find.
Mm-hmm.
I say that, but not all my stuff is the same. But it does make it easier. It is a better way to do it. But I had already established different. Well, really, it's just my Facebook that is different. It comes to my other stuff. I've changed all my other stuff over, so it's not so bad. So thank you so much, Kendra, for coming on the show. Is there any last words that you want to share before we say goodbye?
I think the biggest thing for people is don't let whatever thing that's happening to you mentally attach it as if it's a part of you, but also don't neglect that it's a part of you. Because that part of the thing in which you maybe are neglecting is the thing that probably maybe becomes your platform. Is not for you to be over you, but it's something for you to be over, meaning to stand on. And that is the thing. And so I think it's so important that we want to hide it, kind of what we talked about before, but it may be the thing that liberates you of the thing that you felt like broke you or the thing that isn't good. So there is I hate to say this, but the sound wrote, there is a purpose in it all, but don't realize that if you're still standing, are you still living? Maybe you're not even standing, maybe you're sitting, that don't let it overcome you, that it is meant for you to overcome it.
Ooh, that's powerful. I love it. So thank you again for coming on the show.
Yes.
As always, thank you so much for the amazing guests that we have on the show. Be sure to check out their links down in the description below. If you want to support the channel, go ahead and check out our merch store. We've got some very cool things on there. That's my favorite. Sorry, I'm busy ending the stigma. But there's some other very cool designs. 10% of the proceeds always goes back to the Canadian Mental Health Association. Be sure to follow us on Facebook at RB Media because we have some great new shows coming up and you never want to miss any of those episodes. And remember, the only way to end the stigma of mental health is to speak openly and honestly. Bye!